Welcome back to DSP Leaders World Forum. It's Wednesday the 13th of May, and coming up now is our session on how to implement Cloud Native Network Transformation. Before we start, a quick reminder that if you want to ask questions later or join the extra shots with Ray LeMaitre programs, then get in touch with us as soon as possible. Details are on TelecomTV, along with our poll question. And so to our panel, how to implement Cloud Native Network Transformation. As we discovered during TelecomTV's inaugural Cloud Native Telco event, service providers and their partners need to understand that Cloud Native is more than just containers and Kubernetes. It's a methodology focused on applications and deployments. So how do service providers build on their investment in NFV, considerable investments in many cases, to create the modern dynamic networks needed for the future? Helping us work out the answers to this, I am delighted to introduce Diego Lopez, Senior Technology Expert at Telefónica, Rabi Abdel, Network Cloud Principal Architect at Vodafone Group, Steve Legge, COO at NetNumber, and Gary Mackenzie, Senior Solution Architect, EMEA Telco Technology Office at Red Hat. Welcome everyone, thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Now, Cloud Native is a subject that generates a lively discussion, and there are many viewpoints as to what exactly it means, best way to implement, what the best practices are. Diego, if I could start with you first, where do you think the telco industry is in terms of readiness for Cloud Native?
Well, to start with, we should have to define what cloud nativeness is. In the sense that if we're talking about functions that are suitable to be scaled, migrated, etc., we are in a quite good position. If we are talking about the highly lightweight function components that are now so pervasive in cloud environments, still we are starting to consider it, among other things, because they are very strong challenges when it comes to the to implementing this approach in many of the network environments.
And Rabi, what's your view of, from another CSP, what's your view of the industry's readiness for Cloud Native? Because you're also on the CNCF's Telco user group, aren't you?
Yeah, so a Cloud Native for me, Guy, is more like a journey. It's not really an on or off question. And if we look at the industry has been coordinating together and collaborating into fighting the challenges which Diego has referred to. And those are really around networking. Networking is still a challenge in a container world. The similar thing that we saw in the VNF and the NFV, we're still seeing the same challenges in containers. When it comes to things like also security, there's still some challenges that need to be addressed. Now, containerization has been working quite nicely in the IT workload, and we really need to find a way now to move those technology and apply it into network virtualization as well. Organizations such as CNTT is been really bringing a lot of attractions in the community, and we have more than 50 operators that are trying to collaboratively create a reference architecture for the containerization platform. So this is something the industry has been taking very seriously now and really trying to accelerate and collaborate early on, so we bring the benefit to everybody as early as we can.
Steve, when you work with your service provider partners, what are you seeing? What level of readiness for Cloud Native are you seeing?
So, Guy, we see a whole spectrum really of readiness there. From some of our customers have more recently just invested in virtualization and stepping into NFV, to those who have maybe invested very early on in that cycle, so are now looking at the next steps. Clearly, it depends on where they are in their journey to 5G. But we started to see RFPs maybe around 6 months ago that were asking for cloud native solutions with regard to those deliverables. But we certainly expect to see this pick up toward the end of the year. We see POCs starting toward the end of this year with some CSPs, and through 2021, I would expect that to start to ramp up.
Great. And Gary, what's Red Hat seeing from its telco customers and partners?
So certainly we're starting to see some POCs at this point for network functions. Obviously, we've seen a lot of IT workloads already moving towards cloud native. I'd actually echo something Rabi said about cloud native being a journey rather than an on-off switch or a destination in itself. And I think that's an important point. We need to go on the whole journey to adopt cloud native, including taking it on boarded sort of organizational and cultural changes as well as the technology changes that are part of it.
Diego, just picking up on that comment from Gary, is there an end goal? Is there a clear picture of this ideal network, and or are we making gradual steps and just basically feeling our way as we go along?
Well, I don't think that there is a so clear picture because, among other things, because we are working on it. It's a journey. We are making the network evolve. Well, we will be making the network evolve. I guess hopefully, because it's one of my tasks. We will be making the network evolve for the coming, let's say, 10, 20, 30 years. What they are is a set of properties that are important to preserve. This is precisely about scalability, about the capacity of the different functions following the users, of the capacity of building different services by composing simple units that can be easily managed and deployed and maintained and life cycled, if you allow me the strange verb. And on the other hand, there are a certain set of invariants that are proper of the network environment, like topology, like forwarding of data, like the need for openness that we have to address at the same time. So, in summary, we have the idea and we have the path that we have to follow, and well, we are painting this picture of the network as the whole thing grows.
And Rabi, so much time, money, and effort has been invested in NFV. Is there a clear evolution path to implement cloud native in the network that builds on the investment we've made so far in NFV?
Yes, Guy. So I think VNF will coexist with containers for some time. They are certainly not moving away anytime soon. Therefore, in my opinion, for a successful transformation, it's really important to make sure our architectures, our implementations, our internal processes can support both, but with a clear path really from moving from VNFs into cloud native. And to do that, there's really more work that we need to do with our partners, with our vendors, to work closely together to help each other moving the existing workload from VNFs into cloud native. And the positive thing about this, I believe the industry has done quite a good job, in my opinion, addressing this topic. So there's certainly wide acknowledgement in the industry that we will need to live in this hybrid model for some time. And therefore, we start seeing really examples of container runtimes, for example, that support virtual machines. But what I think is quite important for us as a learning lesson from the NFV is not to repeat the same mistakes we did in the past and live in silos. This is why we really need to be more collaborative, work together, and building this consistent way of doing this hybrid model by running VNFs as well as containers at the same environment. Because there's really a risk if we don't do that quite correctly, we might end up with even more silos that will have to support both worlds. But what we really need is to encourage the collaboration to build this consistent path from moving to where VNFs is to more cloud native functions.
Well, let me bring in Gary and Steve on that point. Steve, I'll start with you. We're going to be operating in a hybrid environment and for some time as we continue NFV and start introducing cloud native, but without the risk of creating more silos.
Yeah, Guy, I echo what Rabi said there. I think it's very important. I think from our perspective, when thinking about the journey that the CSP needs to go through. First of all, meeting them where they are as a vendor. Where are they today? What investments in infrastructure have they made? And then what is the goal and where do they need to get to? And I think two things there. Education is absolutely key. I think the industry is doing a great job. As someone mentioned before, the CNTT, the CNCF Telecom User Group, Open Source Mano, all of those initiatives are great industry initiatives that people need to pay attention to, contribute to where they can. And I think then as vendors, making sure that we don't fall into the trap here overall of creating very specific solutions around these technologies. I think the enterprise IT world is a pretty good bellwether here for this type of technology. It's been built to solve problems that it's solving quite nicely, and the telecom industry should certainly draw upon those lessons and leverage those because certainly to get to the 5G networks of the future and the use cases that are being talked about in the industry, you do need web scale applications. You do need networks that can support that. So leveraging this technology is absolutely key to be able to do that.
And Gary, the need to operate within hybrid environments for a while and not create new silos, is that a challenge for you, or is this quite logical?
I think it's quite a logical progression. At Red Hat, we've essentially seen two models for that transition from NFV to a more cloud-native world might happen. And I use the word transition advisedly rather than migration, as I think it will be a transition over time, rather than moving workloads across. I think it's a given that virtual machines, NFV workloads will continue to exist for some time to come. So it's necessary to run both platforms for some time. As alluded to, I think what we would call a dual stack model with both stacks existing in parallel is something we will see in a lot of places, but we're also working on various technology outcomes for what we call a convergent model. So effectively that takes the form of those NFV workloads, so effectively virtual machines running on top of a container platform in some form or another. So we're doing a lot of research on that at the moment. And we see that being quite key to moving towards a more hybrid mode and maybe moving some of those workloads towards a public cloud model as well, where appropriate.
Jacob, can I come back to you about the evolution of NFV and where NFV is moving to? Because there's been quite some talk at the moment around Kubernetes and whether or not that can develop into an ecosystem in itself that is a logical next step for NFV.
First of all, what I would like to say is that there is a general misconception that I try, and some other colleagues try to fight. This is the fact that putting as contraries NFV and Cloud Native, or NFV and containers. NFV is about virtualizing the network functions. Containers is a way of virtualizing the network functions. Virtual machines are another way of virtualizing the network functions. And unikernels are another way of virtualizing the network functions. So what we're talking is about different platforms for implementing it. And the same way that some time ago, I remember when all these NFV endeavors started, we were talking on whether OpenStack could constitute the complete base for NFV. And then we realized that, well, in some cases it was true, but in many other cases you need an additional layer for supporting certain aspects that were required by the fact that you were working, providing network functions and not providing compute or storage simply compute and storage. I think that with Kubernetes is a little bit the same. It's another platform. It's a platform that will be able to support or is able to support containerized workloads, and these workloads could be VNFs, virtual network functions. Probably Kubernetes as it is right now, and without an evolution of some of the parts, would not be suitable for all kind of network functions. For sure, it would be suitable for certain set of network functions in the control plane, because at the end, network functions in the control plane are servers that are interacting with clients the same way that you do in web space. But there are the challenges, the highest challenges are related to the data plane and how you interact with them. And for this, right now, I know that there are active research in these matters, but right now, Kubernetes or whatever other container platform is not enough yet. So yeah, it will evolve, but it would need a careful evolution in a certain direction to support, let me insist, containerized NFV the same way that OpenStack was supporting VM-based NFV.
This is a complex subject, and a lot of CSPs, especially the smaller, maybe tier 2, tier 3 CSPs, they struggle a little bit for guidance. I'd love to hear from you all what the best route is for those CSPs. You know, where is the guidance coming from? Because we've got to coalesce, I guess, as an industry around maybe one or two paths to take, one ideally. Where is this taking place? Anyone got any ideas?
So certainly, Guy, there is a few initiatives in the industry that trying to define what does it mean to be cloud native, specifically for network workload. Now, going back quickly to Diego's point about Kubernetes, yes, the fact is Kubernetes is the de facto for containerization, management, and orchestration, the workload orchestration. But let's not forget that about the infrastructure. Now, a service, when we deliver to our customer, it's not just about the workload. It has to be orchestrated end to end. And this is when we have need to connect to stitch the service together, provide connectivity to the customer, and that we really what orchestration responsibilities need to go beyond what Kubernetes is trying to do. Now, of course, as Kubernetes as a platform, it is evolving within time, and they're really eager to get the telco requirements, and this is why you have the CNCF tug group trying to collect those requirements from operators and feed them back into the industry. In terms of what is the single source of information that for smaller players to go for, I would say there is different ones. Of course, the CNCF tag group is certainly a group that's trying to look at operators' requirement, but also if you look at CNTT, it's really collaboratively bringing operators as well as vendors to trying to leverage what exists in the industry, analyze the gaps, and trying to be more proactive into addressing those gaps. So bringing this consistency in the cloud platforms will certainly benefit the overall industry. And this is, in my view, the starting point when you talk about cloud native, because you really need to have this concrete infrastructure that you build your workload on top of. Let me just add additional thing is when you look at the initiatives that the TIP are doing, for example, also looking at Open RAN or the new Open Core networking project and trying to containerize those elements. These are all activities that will certainly help identifying where the actual gaps are, so we collaboratively can go after addressing them within CNCF or within CNTT or even ITSI, the all organizations that are trying to achieve the same goals.
Gary, you were agreeing with Rabi there.
Yes, no, I think he's hit the nail on the head for a couple of groups there, particularly CNCF Telecom User Group and also the Telecom Infra Project. Some very interesting things going on there if you look at the relatively new Open Core project and what they're doing in terms of collaboration with Open RAN. What I would say to perhaps extend that is I think there are different sources depending on whether you're talking about infrastructure or a specific workload. And it will be necessary for operators, even small operators, to synthesize opinions, data, information from different sources for some time yet to get the full information they need, I think, in this space.
And Steve, what's your advice for service providers who are still looking for help as to the best strategies to implement cloud native in the network?
Yeah, I certainly agree with the comments around the industry groups there. I think very valuable work, ongoing. Hard to see that ever stopping, really, given the amount of work there and the learning that is required. So certainly they're great sources of learning, and again, I think showing the support there and participation is also valuable. Also vendors, clearly all of us have our own initiatives going for these activities. So learning as much as possible from your vendor partners, I think is key. As well as from the IT perspective, certainly there's a lot of educational solutions out there to learn about all of these aspects. And something that we haven't talked about much here is the integration, and it was mentioned at the beginning, but the integration of the tooling and the processes. I think as much as this is about technology, and there is work to do with the technology, it's also about people and processes and education. So I think rounding all of this out with that, that aspect is absolutely essential. Trying to implement this technology without the fundamental knowledge and the underlying processes. And I know at NetNumber we've just been through, over the last year and a half, implementation of DevOps, for example. Hugely valuable, a great project, absolutely delivered on the promises there. And I think a lot of that comes down to educating the workforce and really understanding the end goal as before you start to spend money.
Steve, I'm really glad you mentioned people and processes, because we do have a dedicated session for that coming up later this week. And it's absolutely right. You've got to take the two together. Diego, can I pick up on that with you? It sounds like hybrid is going to be the norm for a considerable future. So what does that mean for the telco operations teams? It's going to be an unusual set of skills and different working practices.
Well, it would require probably a new set of skills, or to discover the new set of skills. I am of the opinion that it's not that there is no knowledge on software and on open source, etc., among the workforce in the operators. The point is that it has not been used in the past, and in some cases, even because of cultural pressure, it has been somehow back pushed by the management, because it was supposed to be a kind of way of looking for solutions, of implementing solutions that were against the former procedures. My impression is that there are many people that are aware of these new skills inside the company, already inside the companies, and what they had to do, what the management has to do is precisely to encourage this and to change the way of thinking. No, you had to go the formal way, RFI, RFP, RFQ, which is certification, deployment, etc., into something that is more agile, and encouraging those people that have been trying to find ways that are more efficient on their own to deal with these processes, to encourage them to go that way. Hybrid. Well, things have been hybrid for telcos almost always since the good old SS7 was deployed. We've been talking about the digital hierarchy, optical networks. We have been talking about fixed and mobile. We have been talking about ATM. We have been dealing with new with Ethernet all over the place. The internet, everything has happened. And in fact, if you think about it, during the last probably 50 years, telco network has been anything but homogeneous. And I doubt that they will become homogeneous, at least in the midterm. And the idea, as I said before, is that we have to deal with all this heterogeneity by supporting a way of making it programmable and manageable in a homogeneous way. But it's about providing a common substrate that allows us to apply homogeneous management and control mechanisms rather than actually making it really homogeneous, because it is essentially impossible given the nature of networks and the so diverse users and environments in which they had to provide service.
Let me ask a final question to all of you. Rabi, I'll start with you. If the industry is to successfully implement cloud native in the network for the long run, where should the industry be focused now? Are there any certain areas or technologies that we still need to develop and spend time on?
Yeah, certainly. Actually, there are a few areas that I feel the industry still have more work to do on. Certainly, the first one would be the networking challenges that we still see in the container world as well as in the VM world. And this is really to do with the interfaces of SDN controllers and how do you really manage the infrastructure in a consistent and standard way. Additional to that, when the workload really is trying to consume those networking resources, there's no standard yet of how that being consumed, and this is something that I feel still the industry is gapping. Additional to that, I think the infrastructure abstraction is still a problem. Even containers still require a specific form of underlying infrastructure capabilities to perform the way we expect it to, whether it was a specific NIC or an acceleration resource or even an interface. We still see some dependencies from the workload to the underlying infrastructure, and that really need to go away. In my opinion, the world of network and infrastructure and the world of software, DevOps and automation really has to come together, meet at a point which is really well defined, standardized, and abstracted. Another topic I feel is still lacking attention is load balancing. So when we talk a lot about scaling out your workload as to keep up with the demand, and that require really a lot of effort into is balancing the workload and the session to the available instances in your infrastructure. And if you look at the way IT is doing it, they're relying heavily in HTTP to do the load balancing, but networking comes with much richer protocols, and hence we really need a dedicated load balancing to be specific for networking that will take into account performance and latency. Additional items, I would say state management and making sure components are stateless. Security also is another concern. I think although the industry has been doing a good progress into addressing multi-tenancy, there's still certainly more work to be done around making sure the workload is really isolated so we deliver the best security for our customers.
Great. Gary, if I can move on to you, where do you think the industry needs to focus in terms of technologies?
So I think Rabi's given a good list of the technical gaps we have today. I think, to me, most of those gaps feel like things that we can and will solve. My view of where we actually need to focus as an industry is, I think Steve kind of hit on that with the people and process. I think ensuring we have the process and mindset to make the most of this technology, to sort of set our direction correctly for the use of cloud native and what we want to achieve with the network. I feel it's a case of not necessarily knowing our exact destination, but knowing our direction of travel and the capabilities we want to build, and then along the way how we use them. But I think achieving that is very much about the people and process aspects rather than the technology. The technology aspects, while they're real, they feel solvable to me.
Great. And Steve, moving across to you. Final question, where do we think we as an industry need to focus?
Well, I would agree, Guy, with both Rabi and Gary there on their comments. But I would also add, I mentioned the CI/CD tooling and processes before, but I would also add the OSS layer. I think one aspect here, it's great to get to the utopia here of one day of the cloud native infrastructure, but clearly that interfaces with the rest of our operational processes and tools at the customer. It's very different when you look at the tooling in these stacks versus what we're used to in the traditional products and services that we've deployed in the past. So I think OSS is an area of focus that I think should be talked about more on the way through. So integrating with legacy EMS. There's protocols that used to be there that aren't there anymore in this world. How do you do that? Logging, tracing, all of those things. And again, there's a lot of great solutions out there as part of this stack. And I'd like to see the industry move forward, not in a proprietary way, but really in a following the open sort of standards, if to use those two terms back to back there, that the enterprise IT world has led the way with. So I think that's an important consideration here for us all to think about.
Great. And Diego, final word to yourself. Anything more to add of where the industry needs to focus?
Oh, well, it's for sure the list of technology challenges that Rabi has mentioned, and the additions that we had to concentrate on people and skills, and that is necessary to incorporate the whole ecosystem. Is not only for the network itself or the network we're operating. It's true. I think that there is a need of a change in the industry as well when it relates to the processes and how we make procurement, how we decide to make the deployment, how we make the operations, etc. It's not only a matter of technology, that it is, and without the technology solutions, we will not be able to go anywhere. But on the other hand, it's precisely adapting to these new technology solutions and being entering a brave new world in which things are going to be completely different, and we will have to to learn how to be precisely, we are claiming continuously for being more agile, for applying the mechanisms that are cloud native, etc. But for doing so, we need different structures, different ways of interacting among the different actors. And this is something I repeat very often. It's not only to do with the operators, it has to do as well with the providers, and it has to do as well even with the regulators, because if you think about it, most of the regulations are precisely right now built on the fact that the network has clearly well-defined and static physical interfaces, and it's not actually it's not the case anymore, but or in a series of cases, but it won't become less and less true, and this adaptation of all the whole ecosystem is a challenge, and precisely this is one of the things we need. The second is about I would say the proliferation of different initiatives, standards, open source, etc., that generates a complicated landscape. I'm not advocating for a unique and only solution, because that would be equally dangerous. But it would be good to find a way in which the cooperation can take place without inventing a new body, a new open source project or whatever. A small group of people with which I regularly interact are thinking precisely about coining, using the term precisely ecosystem, trying to find new ways of providing open solutions, of exploring and validating open solutions, and help the industry in this transformation. Let's see if we manage to do something that is usable and feasible.
Well, let's hope so. Diego, Rabi, Gary and Steve, thank you all very much indeed for joining us today. Now, if you have any questions for our guests or any additional comments or views you wish to add, then please do get in touch with us. And if you want to be part of the ongoing conversation, then you need to join us on our discussion programme, Extra Shot, with TelecomTV's editorial director, Ray Lemaitre. Get in touch with us now through social media or email. Otherwise, please take a look at the sessions that we've already held. They are all available for on-demand viewing now here on Telecom TV, and we'll be adding future sessions to the archive as the week goes on. Coming up next is our session on emerging tech, the new wave of innovation. And you'll be able to watch that later today from 4 p.m. UK time. But for now, a final thank you to our panelists and also to you for watching. Thank you and goodbye.